Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at an extremely cool Pokemon in the Open Ultra League, a fully maxed level 51 perfect IV Shadow Pidgeot. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Fernando Lovebox, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now Pidgeot we do see from time to time in the Open Ultra League, but basically never as the Shadow. Since it maxes below 2500 CP, you do need the Hundo, and getting perfect IV Shadow Pokemon is extremely rare. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at this extremely rare Pokemon in action in the Open Ultra League. We've got the Battle of Pidgeot in the first match, but the opponent is not running the Shadow. Farming up, going for the Brave Bird due to the best buddy boost here, going to be able to win charge attack priority over most other Pidgeots. The Brave Bird connects, and the opponent gets one hit KO'd. Looks like it was a slightly under-leveled Pidgeot from the opponent. In comes Como-O, and now we're going to see a switch to the Jellicent. I do really like this switch, because now Como-O is forced to throw Dragon Claws, which is its weaker move. Jellicent, farming up, baiting with the Surf. Opponent is going to switch and make a catch onto Cresselia. They end up no shielding. Even if it was the Shadow Ball, they can survive there. Jellicent going to fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will inflict massive damage to Cresselia. Cresselia will commit the shield. And at this point, I mean, this is just a game that you can win with the Trevenant. So I definitely don't mind the no shield, as the opponent will go for the Grass Knot. Oh, Grass Knot doesn't even KO, and the Jellicent is able to hang on. XL Jellicent is actually one of the Ultra League Pokemon that I do not have, so I'm not too familiar with the damage values there, but that is a clutch survival. In comes Trevenant, and Trevenant in a very comfortable spot to close out this game. The Moonblast is going to be shielded. The switch by the opponent to the Como-O, and again, Como-O in a position where it can't use its most powerful charge attack of close combat. Trevenant firing off the Shadow Ball. This can guarantee the final shield, and then you can send in the Pidgeot to close out the game. In comes the Pidgeot, opponent sends in Cresselia, and they will resign the match. Moving to the next match, Shadow Pidgeot versus Tapu Fini. It is the shiny Tapu Fini as well. Definitely got to be one of the best shinies in the entire game. Shadow Pidgeot is running Aerial Ace, but has no intentions of using it. Going straight for the Shadow Brave Bird. It nearly one-hit KOs. In comes the Jellicent. Opponent, a little bit shell-shocked by the damage there, will fire off the Nature's Madness, and then they're going to send in Guzzlord. Guzzlord is an incredible problem for these back two Pokemon, so baiting this out is very important. We're going to see the Shadow Ball fired by the Jellicent. Guzzlord continuing to farm. Guzzlord is going to play to the charge attack priority tie, denying the Shadow Ball from the Jellicent. Dragon Claw will pick up the KO. Now Pidgeot desperately has to get rid of this Guzzlord, because if you're not able to get rid of the Guzzlord, then Trevenant is going to get absolutely crushed in the endgame. Pidgeot continuing the farm. Another charge attack reached by the Guzzlord. The Guzzlord, so much energy. Pidgeot going for the Aerial Ace. If the opponent double shields, this is probably just game over. They are going to let that through, however. The Pidgeot is able to make a last-second Aerial Ace. Is the opponent going to commit the shield here? No, they let the Guzzlord go. And in the back, it's Trevenant. A lifeline has emerged. Opponent tries for the catch on the Shadow Ball, but they are unsuccessful. Back in comes the Registeel. We're going to see the bait by the Trevenant. The Seed Bomb bait gets no shielded. Oh my goodness. The opponent not committing the shield, which considering they're throwing Zap Cannons is a pretty big surprise. And we do see the Zap Cannon debuff get applied. Fernando says, you know what, if at first you don't succeed, keep baiting. This time able to successfully get that shield bait. And we're going to see Trevenant commit the shield on the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon gets another debuff. Trevenant now double debuffed here. The switch to Pidgeot, resetting that debuff. Trevenant going for another Seed Bomb. If the opponent calls this would be disastrous, but they will commit the shield. Can Trevenant survive? This will be close. The Zap Cannon, Trevenant hangs on. Trevenant going to be firing off the Shadow Ball. Will this be enough to KO? I believe the answer is no. The Registeel survives, but the Trevenant takes the win with 1 HP remaining. Picking up an okay lead in the next match, Shadow Pidgeot versus Skeletor. Pidgeot will be able to outpace by 1 turn, building up to the Brave Bird, baiting with the Aerial Ace, hoping for the shield, but the opponent calls the bait, banks a Shadow Ball, save switches a Greninja, and this is a massive, massive problem. The Shadow Pidgeot is already in a range where Hydro Cannon will be lethal, and with 2 Ghost types in the back, Night Slash is very threatening as well. Pidgeot able to grab his shield with the Aerial Ace shield bait, but unfortunately not going to be able to make it to the Brave Bird before Greninja makes another Hydro. Hydro will pick up the KO. In comes Trevenant. Trevenant is going to get outpaced, and things are definitely looking tough in this matchup. Greninja goes for the Night Slash. Trevenant is going to overfarm ever so slightly and fire off the Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb will be lethal if they let it through, and they do. But they can just send back in the Skeledirge. Skeledirge will have to throw energy here, so Skeledirge is going to be firing off the Disarming Voice. Trevenant is going to let that through. Opponent goes for a Shadow Ball, maybe anticipating a catch, and it's an I-Switch, U-Switch. Oh my goodness. In comes the final Pokemon of Jellicent, and the opponent blind switches Poliwrath. At least for the opponent, they're going to be able to apply debuffs here, but this is such a dominant matchup for the Jellicent that the opponent is going to be in a tremendous amount of trouble. To be fair, even staying in with the Skeledirge, they would have been in a very difficult spot, because Jellicent could have just hexed once and farmed all the way down. But man, the core break in the endgame, the opponent not committing to that Greninja, and that's going to cost them, as now Jellicent is absolutely dominating in this endgame. Poliwrath firing off another charge attack. It is going to be another Scald. Jellicent does not care. In comes the Skeledirge, and there's already 2 Surfs ready to go on the Jellicent. Surf number 1 will be shielded. Opponent is going to be firing off the Disarming Voice, but again, this is a very safe shield for the Jellicent. 1 Hex and the Surf. This is going to be game over for the Skeledirge. There's still a Poliwrath left in the back, but it is so low on HP. Poliwrath just going to get hexed down, and Jellicent is able to sweep the endgame. Moving to the next match, Shadow Pidgeot versus Mantin, the battle of Pokemon that can't even reach 2500 CP. The Mantin staying in. Mantin will make the Ice Beam when the Brave Bird is reached, but the Mantin does not go for it right away. Pidgeot, Brave Bird, massive damage to the Mantin. Mantin staying in here and firing off energy. That means they don't have a great response available for a Jellicent, because if they did, they would save the energy and just switch it in. And if they don't have a good response for Jellicent, then hopefully that's good news for the Trevenant in the back. They send in Cresselia, so oh my, they are so weak to Jellicent. Jellicent firing off the Shadow Ball, Cresselia commits the shield, but even if they do go for the Grass Knot, we've seen Grass Knot does not knock out here. So Jellicent is going to no shield. Opponent goes for the Future Sight. That will not KO either. And Jellicent is going to fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball to the Cresselia is going to be no shielded. Jellicent trying to make it to another charge attack. And we're going to see Cresselia forced to fire off another charge attack. They're forced to use so much energy. In comes the Trevenant. Trevenant can potentially go for a very nice 1 shield farm down here. Oh, decides to fire off the Seed Bomb. Opponent actually ends up getting the sacrificial swap as they get the catch onto the Mantin. So the opponent able to honestly find a pretty okay use for the Mantin, but in the back, it's Annihilate. And this is just game over for the opponent. There's just nothing they can do at this point. We are going to see the Aerial Ace fired off by the Shadow Pidgeot. They're going to commit the shield. Even if they get the boost, that's still just not a win con for the opponent. Night Slash. We do see the boost by the opponent. They fire off a Night Slash when they could have farmed down, but realistically, even if they farm down, Trevenant is just in a completely 1 position, because Trevenant already had the Seed Bomb loaded. So Trevenant will be able to shield up the Night Slash, overfarm quite a bit, I believe just shy of the Seed Bomb plus Shadow Ball, but realistically, with a shield remaining, that's very okay. As in comes Cresselia. Cresselia is going to lose charge attack priority, going for some bad manners, not hitting a single bubble on that Shadow Ball. It looks like it is still going to be enough to knock out, and Trevenant is able to take the win. Shadow Pidgeot versus Shadow Dragonite. Pidgeot will have the pacing advantage, but look at the Dragon Breath here. Oh my goodness, Shadow Dragonite so oppressive with the fast moves. The Aerial Ace will be shielded by the opponent, and if Dragonite wants, they can potentially go for a 2-shield farm down. So, gonna save the Pidgeot and send in Jellicent. Jellicent can tank Dragon Claws for days. Dragon Claw not gonna be particularly damaging. Opponent gonna send in a Shadow Venusaur, and Venusaur is gonna be hit with a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will do quite a lot of damage. Opponent farming up, and they were looking to overfarm and fire off right before the Shadow Ball. But Fernando's just going to fire off the Surf, and the Surf actually grabs the shield. That is amazing. The opponent actually goes for a full farm down, exiting with so much energy. In comes the Pidgeot. Pidgeot could potentially go for a double shield farm down here. We're going to see the shield as Venusaur goes for the Sludge Bomb. The switch to the Trevenant as the opponent fires up charge attack number 2. Catching that Sludge Bomb in the back, it's Talonflame. And thank goodness the Trevenant is able to withstand the Incinerates and make the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will do some nice damage. They don't throw their energy though. They had a Flame Charge, but they throw the Incinerate. Aerial Ace picks up the KO. Back in comes the Dragonite though, and Dragonite, if it does have enough residual energy, will be able to take this game. Pidgeot trying to get to the Aerial Ace, and they don't have it. The opponent unable to make the Dragon Claw. Aerial Ace KOs. All that's left is the Venusaur and the Shadow Pidgeot. Against all odds, the opponent not throwing the Flame Charge on Talonflame lets the game slip away from them. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Pidgeot versus the Talonflame. Will we see the full send Brave Bird? No. Choosing to bait with the Aerial Ace. Last fire type lead ended up calling it, and the Talonflame calls it as well. That is quite unfortunate. Pidgeot will commit the shield. The opposing Talonflame will go for the Brave Bird and send in Tentacruel. Tentacruel now going to be hit with the Shadow Brave Bird. Are they going to use the shield? They will not, and in comes Jellicent. Jellicent, a complete wall to Tentacruel. Honestly, could have saved the Brave Bird as well and switched out, as the opponent is going to go for an Acid Spray just to try and increase the amount of damage they can do in this thoroughly miserable matchup. Jellicent can overfarm quite substantially and just go for a Surf to pick up the knockout. And Jellicent, it looks like Jellicent's actually going to try for a farm down. The opponent has thrown 2 Acid Sprays already, so Jellicent's defense is -4. They keep Acid Spraying. They are refusing to throw Scald. They can't really send in the Talonflame here because Talonflame is just going to be hit with Surf after Surf after Surf, and they do send in the Talonflame. I am a little bit lost in this game, I'll be honest. They just let it go. Oh, and now we see why they had to send in the Talonflame, because they have an XL Hitmontop in the back, and that's fully powered up. That's level 50. That's a level 50 Hitmontop. Hitmontop going to be hit with the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, honestly, Hitmontop tanked that pretty decently. They should go for the triple axle here just to boost up their attack. And now having to deal with the +1 attack Hitmontop, but the Hitmontop still can't do any counter damage here because even though it's boosted, it's still going to be double resisted. So Trevenant can just shield, fully farm down, and that game ended up getting a little wild in the mid game, but it is still able to end in a win. Shadow Pidgeot versus Alolan Sandslash, a very, very terrible lead, as this is a massive core breaker for the entire team. Thankfully, it's Shadow Claw, which means the Pidgeot is not taking any fast move damage here. Pidgeot is going to farm up and go for the Brave Bird. This is resisted damage, but this is a Shadow Pidgeot. The Brave Bird connects, and just like that, the Sandslash is into the red health. Pidgeot firing off the Aerial Ace that picks up the KO. The opponent had overfarmed too much. They play to a CMP tie that they do not win, and they end up losing the Zero Shield as a Sandslash to a Flying type. Giratina enters the field, so we will see an immediate switch to the Jellicent. Jellicent not baiting, going straight for the Shadow Ball. Giratina, do they decide to call the bait? They do. The Shadow Ball does massive damage in the back. It is Golisopod, and Golisopod could prove to be pretty problematic in this endgame. Shadow Ball shielded by the Golisopod. Golisopod will be able to get so much farm, and at this point you just can't shield as the Jellicent. They have 2 Aerial Aces, so you're just forced to let it go and send in the Trevenant. The switch to the Pidgeot. Opponent never going to be able to farm down here, so they're forced to fire off energy. Aerial Ace will pick up the KO. Back in comes the Trevenant, but Trevenant is so far behind on energy. Trevenant does have a shield advantage, and that is its only hope in this game. In comes the Giratina, and the opponent just made a massive misplay. What they should have done was stay in with the Golisopod and keep the advantage, but now the Trevenant can potentially try and farm all the way down and exit with energy. Going to no-shield the Dragon Claw, exiting with back-to-back moves. It all comes down to, can Trevenant live this Shadow Claw? Seed Bomb, shielded. They do survive the Shadow Claw. It's Shadow Ball time. If the opponent stayed in with Golisopod, they had the guaranteed win con, but by switching in the Giratina, the door is opened, and the game for them ends in a loss. Great lead in the final match, Shadow Pidgeot versus Golisopod. Opponent save switches to Tapu Fini. Shadow Pidgeot just going to stay in here and smack them with a Brave Bird. Shadow Brave Bird nearly picks up the one-hit KO. In comes Trevenant, and Trevenant will just absorb the Nature's Madness and fully farm down. The Shadow Claws from the Golisopod will definitely add up, but as the Trevenant, you can still potentially force a shield back or inflict massive damage with a Shadow Ball, and that is not Shadow Claw. Hold on a second. That is a Fury Cutter Golisopod. Oh my goodness. I have not seen Fury Cutter on Golisopod since it did get access to Shadow Claw. I don't think it was released with Shadow Claw. If I remember correctly here, Shadow Claw was added onto it after the fact. But since this is early on in the season, sometimes we do see some interesting movesets and interesting mon choices. And Fury Cutter just not working for them whatsoever here. They're forced to give up both shields. In comes the Jellicent. Their energy is fully walled, and it's a Nidoqueen in the back. Yeah, so this game is so over. Going to fire off the Surf. Surf is going to do some very solid damage to the Nidoqueen, and in comes the Shadow Pidgeot. Pidgeot going to no shield, saying no Stone Edge here, and it is just going to be the Poison Fang from the Nidoqueen. Firing off the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace, I imagine, has to be enough to knock out the Nidoqueen here. The Nidoqueen barely able to hang on, but will get KO'd. In comes Golisopod. Golisopod, all the energy in the world, but it's just not going to matter. X-Scissor is going to get the shield. They're able to hang on. They're still fighting with 1 HP left, thinking somehow this game's going to end in a win, but there was never any hope as Jellicent is able to win that game. All in all, I've got to say, I'm extremely jealous that this trainer has the level 50 Perfect IV Shadow Pidgeot. That is an insane flex. Of the Shadow Perfect IV Pokemon that you can get, getting a usable one is always incredibly nice. So having one that is pretty meta-relevant in the Ultra League is terrific. So big congratulations to Fernando, and thank you for sending in the battles as well. So we get to see something that 99.9% of us will never have, the Perfect IV Shadow Pidgeot. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.